How long should I go? 15 days. 8:30. من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين وبالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن يبتغي غير الإسلام دينا فلن يقبل منه وهو في الآخرة من الخاسرين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات بيجي محمد وعلى السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Once again, it's a privilege and honor to be amongst all of you once again. Place which I consider to be my, if I say second, would you wonder? My second home, or it was first as far as my studies is concerned. Thanks for the elaborative explanation or details about me. Nonetheless, once again, it's very humbly I request that, you've seen my style of speaking, and if you see any, mistakes, inshallah, you will overlook. So just a humble student of Maktab al-Tashayyu, and inshallah, in the time that I've been given, I'll try and address in these series of 5 majalis that we have up until the day of Arba'een, inshallah. The verse that I chose for tonight's lecture is from Surah Al-Imran, chapter 3, verse number 85, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses by saying, whoever desires a religion other than Islam, it will not be accepted from them, and they are amongst the losers in the hereafter. And that's the literal translation of these words. Now, with that said, maybe someone gets an idea that, here we go, anyone who is a non-Muslim is bound to khusran mubin and would be considered a loser, not just in this world, but also in the hereafter. Therefore, one may develop a perspective about their non-Muslim colleagues, friends at school for kids, and they may start judging them based on this particular ayah. And when we look at these ayat of Quran, we got to be very careful not to just lean towards the translation and the apparent meaning of the verse. Every ayat of Quran has an apparent meaning as well as an implied meaning. Apparent meaning is something which the translator has done his best to go ahead and present the Arabic into the English. But a lot of time, without looking at the tafsir, you might fail to understand the implied meaning of the verse. And hence, there are many such verses in Quran which talk about the apparent and the implied meaning. For example, the ayat of Quran which talks about by saying, إِن جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا, that if a fasiq, person who commits sins openly, comes to you with the news, in other words, Fox News brings you news, فَتَبَيَّنُوا. Don't take it right away. Ponder over it. Maybe it is that they're trying to mislead you. But if you were to remove the word fasiq with adil, definitely the tone of Quran will change as well. It will not say, no, tabayyanu now even. No. When an adil comes to you, a just individual comes to you with the news, you're going to go ahead and take it. So the apparent meaning of that ayat was, don't take anything from fasiq, ponder over it. But the implied meaning is anyone other than fasiq. For example, if it was an adil, you will go ahead and take that meaning from them. And there are many such ayat in Quran by which we can figure out the apparent and the implied meaning which is associated. Now going back to the verse that I recited, وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا, that whoever desires a religion other than Islam, it will not be accepted. فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ, it will never be accepted. وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ, and that person is amongst the khasirin in the hereafter. So therefore, that notion is given to us that anyone who is not a Muslim falls under this category. Some have tried to resolve this issue by explaining that the word Islam over here does not refer to the religion of Islam. It could well mean submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, when you say submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it definitely opens and broadens the perspective that it is not just the Muslims who are saved from, because there are many Muslims who are still going to be amongst the losers in the hereafter, even by having adopted the religion of Islam. So then how is it that it is talking about those who are not Muslims? With that said, if you refer to the other verses of Quran, you will find that Allah has drawn exception to many such groups, such as be Christians or Jews or followers or other divine religions. For example, in Surah Ma'idah, verses 65, 66, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Jews and the Christians, talks about if they were to follow their teachings, if they were to follow the book that was revealed to them, then definitely they will find the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah gives an exception saying, minhum ummatun muqtasida. Amongst these Christians and Jews, there's what? There's ummatun muqtasida. There's that ummat, that nation that still exists amongst them, which is muqtasid, which is in the platform of moderation. They're neither on this side or that side. Therefore, this nation, this people, this group of people will be awarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So right away you might say, well, there's a contradiction now, because over there Allah says, فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ, and over here He's drawing these conclusions or there are exceptions to the law as well. No, so therefore we understand that you can't just take the ayah from the apparent meaning of it. Rather, you need to dig deep into it, see what Ma'asumeen have said in reference to that ayah, and that is the reason the Prophet said, Inni tarikun fikum muttaqalain kitabullah wa itrati ahl bayti. If you were to keep both of them together, then you will remain from such understanding. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But with that said, definitely the path is only Islam. Although the exception was drawn, but the path is only Islam, because Quran says, Inna ad-deena inda Allahi Islam. Deen in the sight of Allah is only Islam. And therefore, that is the reason Allah said, Raditu lakum al-Islam ad-deena, that I'm satisfied with the religion of Islam from you. So therefore we understand, with all that said back there, with the exception drawn, but nonetheless the only true path would be Deen-e Mubeen Islam. Now when this deen is concerned, now when we have the discussion about deen, we need to understand this deen first of all. What is this deen? What is the meaning of the word deen? If you were to pick up book of dictionary, you'll find deen sometimes refers to compensation. Sometimes refers to something that will be given to them. Or in more istilahi terminological perspective, deen is referred to a collection of rules and laws. Therefore, when we look at deen, if I was to ask, especially the youngsters sitting over here, how do you explain deen to someone? If you were given a task, or even the elders, if you were given the task to explain deen, how would you go ahead and do so? Now you may end up explaining deen is this, deen is that, and may write a paragraph about it, or maybe a couple of pages are needed to explain deen in its entirety. But when you get up and leave from here tonight, you will know deen could be explained in 3 letters. AAA. Deen is AAA. Not the company AAA, but what it stands for, this AAA. First A stands for your aqaid. Aqaid definitely means your beliefs. Belief in nubuwwat, belief in imamat, belief in qiyamah. Number 2, A is ahkam, the do's and the don'ts of the religion. And with these 2 added, third A stands for akhlaq, ethics and morals. You could have all the aqaid and you could have all mastered all the ahkam, but if you're lacking akhlaq, then the first 2 will not have any value, none whatsoever. That's how important this akhlaq is, the morality. You could have a great alim sit on the mimbar, give a beautiful lecture, but if he is lacking akhlaq, it'll turn you off with the character of that individual. That it'll be to the extent that you will start drawing blank when that person is addressing to you, because of the akhlaq that you have associated or seen from such an individual. Therefore, try and beautify your akhlaq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this body and gave us this soul, and He emphasized a great deal on the beautification of the soul of mankind. We spend all the time in the world, the beautification of this physical body of ours, yet the akhlaq and the soul of insan gets ugly and ugly every single day. Therefore, make sure that this akhlaq is there. With that said, what is deen? Someone was to ask you. Deen is 3 A's. Deen is aqaid, ahkam, and akhlaq. If you have these 3 things, that means you have everything that deen demands for you. There's not a 4th thing that you will need, because everything is encompassed under these 3 categories. So you have aqaid, and you have ahkam, and you have the akhlaq. Now with that said, how important is this deen? Does this deen really worth us talking about it tonight? Does this deen really has that much value that we should focus so much and emphasize? And all of these scholars that come and they spread this deen and they talk about this deen, is it really worth it that much? What this deen has done to us that we must focus so much upon it? And this is a question which has to be answered. When we look at, especially in the month of Muharram and Safar, why are we gathering over here? The only reason that brings us together on this occasion is the martyrdom of Imam Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. Salli ala Muhammad. Regardless of what walks of life you come from, but the martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shuhada is something which is bringing you over here. Not me, not anyone else. It's this Farsh Aza and the dhikr of Sayyid al-Shuhada which has drawn your attention, has brought you over here. You could be enjoying your day with your family, visiting someone, going outside, having some fun, but the fact that you heard that there will be dhikr of Sayyid al-Shuhada in a majlis, Allah gave you this tawfiq that you are present over here. Now with that said, we know Imam Hussein. At least we think we know Imam Hussein. We don't need to explain Imam Hussein to us ourselves, at least, to our children at least, because they have learned growing up about Imam Hussein. And every year they learn about him all over again. Now there's not a Shia child who does not know Hussein. When the word Hussein comes about, everyone knows who Imam Hussein is. With that said, we don't need to elevate the status of Imam Hussein, nor can we do it. It is enough to mention such ahadith in regards to Imam Hussein that Prophet said, Husaynun minni wa ana min al-Husayn. I don't even need to translate. Prophet said, Innal Husayna misbahul huda wa safinatul najah. I don't even need to translate. You've heard this hadith so many times. Prophet had given so many Sayyida Shabab Ahl al-Jannah, for example. So the character and the biography and the wujud of Imam Hussein is engraved into our minds. We know about Imam Hussein. We know his exalted status, that to the extent that he's amongst the youth and the leaders of the youth in paradise, the Prophet calls them to be from him and him from him, Imam Hussein. And Prophet considers him to be Misbahul Huda and Safinatul Najat, the ark of salvation, with all these riwayat about Imam Hussein. and all the merits that are associated with Imam Hussein. No one really needs to explain Imam Hussein to anyone. Now when you understand Imam Hussein, or you have an understanding of Imam Hussein as to what level Hussein ibn Ali is at, there aren't many people who would be above Hussein ibn Ali on the face of the earth, aside from some of the ma'asumeen. With that understanding, if Imam Hussein is willing to sacrifice his life for the sake of something else, just imagine the status of that thing now, right? When Imam Hussein, whose caliber is up there, but he is willing to sacrifice his life for something else, just imagine how important that thing will be. With the establishment of the status of Hussein ibn Ali, now you look at deen. Now when you consider this aspect, a lot of time people hire these, and there's no comparison, I'm just trying to give examples so the youngsters would understand, that you see all these, big companies, they hire these individuals who are very influential, they are role models for the people to go ahead and endorse their products. The person may have nothing to do or may have never used that product, but they'll go ahead and still endorse it. Why? Because their endorsement will go ahead and increase their sale. And so people hire all these influential people because we model them, we consider them to be real role models for us, some of us do. We'll go ahead and buy that product because so-and-so is endorsing it. Similarly, that product may not be worth that much, but nonetheless, because someone important and influential is standing behind it, right away that product gains that value in your eyes, and you go ahead and spend money to go ahead and buy that product. This is how marketing works. You guys know better than me. I'm no expert in it. But here comes to the religious aspect of it, that when Hussein ibn Ali is at that caliber and he's endorsing something, and not just the endorsement, he is willing to sacrifice his life for the sake of this deen, then just imagine the worth and the value of this deen. Have I done enough to establish the worth and the value of religion? Because Hussein's word himself, he said that if I was given life and death, has sab'ina alf marra, not just sab'in marra, 70,000 times to be sacrificed for this religion, it still would not be enough. Now you understand what this deen is. Now you understand the value of this deen. So don't underestimate the religion. Don't, take it for granted. It is something for which sacred blood was shed. It has reached us with much difficulty, with so much pain, with so many people that we adore and we love. They sacrifice themselves for the sake of this deen. And when there's so much sacrifice has been given, let's not squander this deen. Let's try and understand this deen, and let's try and stand behind this deen. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So, 5-fold duties for everyone. You know my style, I will go about, dividing things. So there are 5 things that I'm inshallah going to speak of. If you have your phones, you're allowed to use it to go ahead and jot it down, especially the kids, if you haven't brought any notes. Because, the retention is very limited. You sit in a lecture, you listen, you're trying to focus, you're distracted here and there. A lot of time you spend 45 minutes, an hour listening to a lecture, and by the time you get up and leave, all that stuff and all that information is gone. So therefore, it would not hurt if you go ahead and write these things down, because it's not only the duty of scholars of deen, rather it is the duty of all the individuals who have adhered to this deen and who have desired this deen. What are these 5 duties? Let's begin with number 1. First and the foremost duty of every single one of us towards this deen is ma'rifat of deen, is the proper recognition of this deen. Everybody must have seen the book Nahj al-Balagha, and I'm sure everyone must have read at least the first khutbah of Nahj al-Balagha. We may not know what khutbah number 279 is about, but we all know what khutbah number 1 is, because the first khutbah. So you open it up and you've read it many times. The first khutbah where Amir al-Mu'mineen talks about the creation of the world and all that stuff, Imam says, Awwaluddin ma'rifatuh. The first step of religion is what? Is the ma'rifat of this religion. The proper recognition of this deen. Because if you don't know, then how are you going to go ahead and move to the next step? Now, it's not saying that you go out and become mujtahid. It's not saying that you spend 60 years in Hawza al-Ilmiya, you study and then you preach and then you attain the level of ijtihad. No, that's not what is being asked. Nor is it practical for everyone. That's why we only have a few. Even Quranic ayah tells us, ayah number 122 of Surah Tawbah, that, some of you should go and come back. Not all of you. Some of you should go and come back. لِيَنْفَرُوا كَافَّةً. So some of us have this duty. But nonetheless, as individuals, everyone has this duty to go ahead and attain the ma'rifat of this deen, to the extent which is relevant to you. Now, the masail of Hajj may not be relevant to you up until the point that you actually go ahead and perform Hajj. So no one is asking you to go ahead and study all the masail of Hajj and the intricacies of it, and this is one of the most difficult chapters of the fiqh. No one is asking you to go ahead and master that. But everyone is requesting and understanding is that we have the ma'rifat of the first chapter of, this fiqh of ours. And that is the chapter of ijtihad, for example. That is the chapter of taqleed, for example. That is the chapter of taharat, for example. That is the chapters of salat, for example, and all of those things which we are encountering on a daily basis. That is the ma'rifat of deen. That you should go ahead and learn about it to the extent which is relevant to you, so that, yes, when it comes to difficult masail, you have people that you can ask, but that bare minimum should be coming from you. That ma'rifat, that level should increase on your own by studying. And today, no one really has an excuse by saying, no, how are we going to go ahead and gain this knowledge? Even back then, when one of our 4 major books by the name of Man la yahduruhu al-faqih, the literal translation of the word is what? The one who does not have a faqih, hadir. Man la yahduruhu al-faqih. The one who does not have access to a faqih. When you don't have access to the faqih, this book, Saduq is saying this book is enough for you when you don't have access to a faqih. Today, we have access to the faqih. We have access to fuqaha for that matter. And therefore, this excuse will not fly. Oh Allah, I did not learn the masail of, for example, ahkam musafir, the one who's a traveler. I did not learn the masail of fasting, for example, so I did not fast. I did not learn this, I did not learn those. No, those things you will be held accountable because it was easy for you to learn. So that level of ma'rifat of deen is required from you. I'll go through the list quickly, and I'm inshallah rely on your abilities as well to inshallah go ahead and further this. Number 2, second responsibility and a duty of every individual in this crowd and wherever this message may go is what? Is to have taslim kamil, complete submission towards the ahkam of deen. First, you have to gain ma'rifat in order to have complete submission. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam said, he said, ad-deenu shajaratun asluha fi at-taslim wal-rida. Deen is like a tree. The roots and the original state of this deen is where? Is in taslim and rida. It's in submission and being content with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to you. So therefore, taslim is very important. This complete submission is very important. This bidun chuno chera, as we said, without arguing if you do not understand something about deen. Because it's ahkam ilahi. Now that's one thing to have differences of opinion and asking ulama why there are differences of opinion. But there's one thing, you're questioning the entire subject altogether. Why is this halal or why is this haram for that matter? This is where Quran also gives us this warning. It says, don't be like those people of أَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِبَعْضِ الْكِتَابِ وَتَكْفُرُونَ بِبَعْضِ, that who believe in certain parts of this book and who do not believe. I got it. Who believe in certain parts of the book and who decline to believe in certain parts of the book. Don't be like those individuals. If you don't understand something, that is fine. Go ahead and study more about it. But the fact that you don't understand and don't follow at the same time, which is where the problem arises. Continue to follow even if you do not believe in it. Even if you do not understand it fully, why go the way when later on, when you come to learn that it was haqq, it was truth, and realize that I did not follow it all along, all these years. So continue to follow, and I usually give this example. A lot of time we run into different issues when it comes to, practicing this deen. And for example, someone may raise an issue that why gold is haram for men while it's halal for women. We may not know the real, reason behind it, and we may never find out. But the fact that, fuqaha have deduced from the riwayat that it is haram, stick with it until you continue to do your research and find out the real reasons behind it. And you can derive from this one example many such other examples which are affecting us on daily lives, daily basis. Things that have been considered to be haram, stay away from it, without the fact that if you do not know why such a thing is haram. Because doing it and not understanding it is only continuing on the path that I'm standing against the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why Quran says, وَمَا أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُ. Whatever Rasul has given to you, take it. And whatever he has asked you to refrain from, stay away from it. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So number one was what? Ma'rifat. Number two, complete submission. Number three is difa' az-deen. That means defending this deen, defense of religion and our tenets and things that we believe in. Now, if you don't have proper ma'rifat, and if you have ma'rifat and you don't believe it in yourself and you don't have taslim kamil, then you will definitely not going to be able to do difa' and defend this deen. So therefore, all these are actually working, gradually increasing your level. So you gain ma'rifat, you completely believe in it and submissive towards it, and third, you come to go ahead and do difa from this deen. This is very important. Arrows have been thrown from all different directions, yet we don't stand up for this deen. Every single one of us is an ambassador of Deen and Mubin Islam in our own capacities. Here in this hall, over here in this masjid or any Imam Barga, you may not be posed with such questions, but outside of this, with all the Islamophobia and all those things that exist, you have to be able to, wherever it is possible, without having any sort of bodily or harm, you go ahead and do difa of this deen. Don't expect only to scholars to go ahead and do this job. Every single one of us, it's our duty. So difa is very important. Defense is very important. I'll give you a couple of examples so you understand the level of difa that has been done in the past. There was a person by the name Ammar al-Duhni. In the time of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. This man was once in the court of a qadi by the name Abu Layla. And when he brought forth the witnesses, the qadi refused to accept his witnesses by saying, for two reasons. One, you're Rafidi. Number two, you're Shia. He started crying. Abu Layla thought maybe he's crying because now he feels, regret. He said, what is wrong? He said, I'm crying for two reasons. One, that you associated the accolades and attributes that I do not have. You discussed the features that I do not possess. You called me Rafidi. Do you know Rafidi is someone who denies, who does the inkar of sin, and who denies sinning. While I'm a sinner, I've committed so many sins. Rafidi was referred, the term was used for the first time for those magicians in the time of Hazrat Musa alayhi wasalam who stood up against Pharaoh, saying what? We bring Iman onto Rabbi Musa wa Harun. We bring Iman onto the God of Musa. And right away Pharaoh said, how can you bring Iman without my permission? They had seen the miracle of Hazrat Musa alayhi saying that what we were doing was magic. What he did was pure, godly miracle. And right away they were submissive. He said those were the people. For the first time, the istilah was used for them as Rafidi. Where is the status of those individuals? And where am I? Secondly, I'm a sinner. I've done so many sins. Rafidi is someone who does inkar of sins. So that's one thing. Number two, you called me Shia. Where am I Shia? Shia is someone who does mushaya'at of Imam Ma'soom. That means puts his steps on the footsteps of Imam Ma'soom. And the people such as Salman Farisi, people such as Ammar Yasir, people such as Miqdad were considered to be Shia. Where's the status of those individuals and where am I? There's no comparison, none whatsoever, and that is the reason I'm crying, because you fail to understand as a qadi that how to do qadawat and to how to pass judgment. He stood up in the court of law. He came back to our sixth Imam and he mentioned what went about. Imam said, thank you for defending us. Thank you for standing up for us. And Imam gave him basharat for paradise right after that. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Number two is a person by the name Hassan ibn Yusuf ibn Mutahhar, or more famously known as Allama Hilli. Hassan ibn Yusuf ibn Mutahhar, if you go ahead and study the way that he came to know Sultan Khudabande, was the fact that Sultan had given divorce to his wife, and that too, 3 divorces. And when he referred to and approached all of the ulama of Ahl Sunnah, nobody was able to give him a solution which would make sense to him. Then his wazir said, no, I know a person, I know an alim who might be able to help you. When they approached Allama Hilli, he said, when did you give her talaq? He said, I was really angry. He said, there's no talaq when you are angry. Talaq did not even take place. In fact, you need to have dhawa adlin, 2 adl witnesses as per the ayat of Quran. Were there witnesses? He said, nobody witnessed it. It was just me saying 3 times divorce to my wife, and that was it. He said this divorce never really took place. It is null and void. You're still considered to be husband and wife. That attracted him. Right away, he establishes, a gathering. In that gathering, Hassan ibn Yusuf ibn Mutahhar, Allama Hilli, walks into that gathering. Does not have a magical wand or anything in his hand, Asai Musa, but the followers of that gathering were one of the madhaib, 4 madhaib of Ahl Sunnah. But when Allama Hilli walks out of that mahfil, they were all followers of madhab tashayyu. This is where he stood up. He did not perform any magic, rather he used his knowledge and his ma'rifat of this deen to be able to counter the ishkalat that were posed against the deen. Thus he did difa to Imam, he did difa of madhab tashayyu. So that is our duty as well. Ma'rifat, taslim kamil, and number 3, difa and defending this deen. Number 4 is spreading this deen. A lot of us think that we don't need to spread. It is not our duty. That, thinking like other madhahib, don't want to increase, followers of their religion. I said, we're enough. Because there's this fear factor that exists. How are we going to justify some of our practices? Definitely, those innovations that we have included to be part of the deen will never be able to justify them. Because the source is not Quran and source is not Imam. When the source is not Quran or Rasul or Ma'sumin, then you will not be able to justify them. And many such practices have crept into our madhab. And that is one of the reasons many people say, let's not go ahead and propagate this deen to outside of those who are already the followers. These gatherings should be attracting more brothers of Ahl Sunnah and outsiders than our own. Should be the means of spreading this message and this deen. 14 centuries after, even then, people don't know who Hussein ibn Ali is, then what have we done? We take out these processions, which is a very important factor in spreading and taking this message to the outside world. But there more has to be done in order to go ahead and spread it. You may not want to demographically increase the numbers of those who are Shia. But يُخْرِجُونَهُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. The fact that you're able to bring someone out of darkness toward light, from dhulumat toward nur, isn't that a service to the people? Therefore, do not stay away from spreading this deen. This is indeed duty of every single one of us in whatever capacity we can. But the first and foremost is show it through your akhlaq. I'm reminded of the story where Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. You've heard this story many times, was walking with a person who was a follower of Jewish faith. And Imam and him were walking for a long time. He knew that Imam was headed towards one direction, towards Kufa, for example, and that man was going toward Basra. There was the same path that they came along for a long distance, where they were hamra with each other. They were companions of each other up until that point, where they had to separate. When they separated, that man started walking in his own direction. Imam started walking behind him. That man turned around and he said, "Why are you coming? I thought you were going towards Kufa." He said, "No, it is my duty that if I was a companion of someone, to walk along with them to bid farewell to them. These are the teachings that I follow." Right away, Imam, throughout his path, never tried to influence this man with madhab Islam. All Imam did was show his character, his akhlaq, his morals, his ethical values. And that's all attracted him to ask, what religion is this that teaches someone to go ahead and walk alongside with a stranger, for that matter, if they are going in their own direction? He said, this is the religion of Islam. So you don't have to start explaining the deen from the very get-go. No, impress people with your akhlaq and then work toward the spread of this deen and giving this message to others. So that's number 4. Let's recap. First was ma'rifat. Number 2 was complete submission. Number 3 was defense. Number 4 is to spread this deen. And last but not least is to protect this deen from inhiraf, from deviations, from things which are creeping into and becoming part and parcel of this deen. This is very important because both forces are at it, where they're trying to, give a bad name to madhab tashayyu. They're trying to defame this deen. So many attacks from outside and from within are taking place. I don't know, not too many years ago we had a terminology, but now it is really common that, amongst the Shias you have different groups. Some of them are Wahhabi Shias. They are us. That's us. Because many things are not acceptable to us, so we are the Wahhabi Shias. Because Wahhabis don't accept many things. They say this is bid'ah, this is bid'ah, this is bid'ah. The Wahhabi Shias are those who say no to many practices that have become part of the religion. So that's us. Number 2, you have group of people, you refer them to as malang, that anything or everything is jais for them. Whatever it is that they're doing becomes part of this religion and you can't really question it. And every year, new innovations are being incorporated and introduced in the name of deen. Right away, people of, people who are not well versed in it, they refrain from questioning it. And when you refrain from questioning it, in a few years' time, it becomes part of the deen. And now really nobody can really question against it. Therefore, you have to protect this deen from outside. Those branches of a tree that are extending outside, they have to be chopped off. You'd say, why you chop off something from a tree? So that it can grow better. It will flourish even more. You say, how can something flourish from chopping off? Go ahead and find out. You need to chop off these, branches that are extending outside, which could bring fear and which could bring deviation within the religion. Therefore, this has to be cut off, and you have to do what? Protect the deen from inhirafat. Imam gave his sacrifice. Imam sacrificed himself, his family, for this deen, so that comes a day when we are doing stuff that Imam will be, questioning, that how do you let such things get introduced to the deen? How do you let such innovations become part of the religion? When we are standing up, when 4th Imam was asked that how your father was killed and was humiliated, Imam said, if it was for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then 1,000 times if it happens, it doesn't matter. If Imam Hussein is saying that if my 6-month-old must be sacrificed so that I may protect this deen from inhiraf, let it be. If my 18-year-old, he must be killed right in front of my eyes so that this deen could be protected, so it be. If Abbas must give his arms for the sake of this deen, so it be. If Zainab and Kulsum, they must give their chadar and their veils for the safety and security and protection of religion, then so be it. When Imam is willing to do so much, then what have we done in order to protect this deen? Inshallah, I will continue this discussion moving forward, but let's just realize for 1 second that what kind of sacrifices were given in order to protect this deen and keep it in the form that it has reached us today. You and I would not be anywhere. We would be like others if we were not introduced to Imam Hussein. If Imam Hussein had not given this sacrifice for the sake of this religion, where would we be wandering around? We would be also living this materialistic life without any spirituality in it if it wasn't for Sayyid al-Shuhada and the sacrifice that he gave. You've heard the Masa'ib up until the day of Ashur, the calamity that fell upon them. The little girl and the daughter of Imam Hussein. Little son, 6-month-old of Imam Hussein. You know, on the night of Ashur, Imam was circling and going around different tents, and he stopped by the tent of Rabab. And he heard a cry and a weep coming from that tent. He goes inside and he says, "Oh Rabab, what is the reason of your cry?" She says, "Everyone is willing to give sacrifice tomorrow. In fact, everyone has a sacrifice tomorrow. Layla has Ali Akbar, Zainab has Aun and Muhammad, Farwa has Qasim, and other women have their sacrifices with them. But I have a 4-year-old daughter with me, and I have a 6-month-old son with me. Neither one of whom can perform jihad and sacrifice themselves." Imam said to Rabab, "Don't underestimate the shahadat of Ali Asghar. Don't underestimate the sacrifice of Ali Asghar. That how even Ali Asghar, a 6-month-old, will be able to bring inqilab into the hearts of enemy. That even enemy will be thinking twice before striking towards Ali Asghar. They will be crying and they will be hiding their faces because they will not be able to show it to the world that they did injustice to a 6-month-old. Yes, and do not underestimate the sacrifice that your daughter will give. You know, when Janab Sakina, when she was lost on that day of Ashur at Sham al-Ghariba, Janab Zainab went about looking for Sakina, and she found her laying next to the body of Imam Hussein. She said, "Oh Sakina, how did you find that this is the body of your father? Because you recognize the body either with its head or with the clothes, neither of which exist unto Hussein." She said, "I was calling Baba, Baba, and I saw 2 hands extend out, and I ran towards it thinking that this is my Baba." When this caravan was traveling from Kufa to Sham, going towards Sham, Janab Zainab says that one day the head of Imam Hussein comes to the floor. It would not move. We realized that something of Hussein is missing. That's why he refuses to move forward. Janab Zainab said, "I came and I looked at all of the horses and the camels, and I only found out that Sakina was again missing." She came running again, calling Sakina, "Where are you, oh my daughter?" Up until the point in that dark, I found the lady sitting with Sakina. I said, "Oh lady, thank you for taking care of our daughter, but please give her back to us because the caravan will not move forward." That lady gave me Sakina. I said to her, "Oh lady, we are from Ahlul Bayt. If you have any hajat, you can ask. We will make dua for you." The riwayat, the ulama read, they said, that lady removed her veil and she said, "Oh Sakina, oh Zainab, you did not recognize your mother Fatima." The caravan moved forward. While they were entering Sham, this is where Sakina, only 4-year-old, look at how she treats. This was a man by the name Sahal ibn Sa'd al-Sa'idi. He was coming back from Bayt al-Maqdas and from Hajj. He came, and when he found out that the caravan has been coming, he said, "Why did you decorate the city? Is there any tahwar? Is there any festival that is going on?" He said, "There's no festival, but Hussein was martyred and the captives are being brought in." He said, "Where are they coming from? They said, Babu Sa'ad. He comes to Babu Sa'ad only to see the ladies that are mounted onto the horses. They do not have any veils. And only to see the heads of Shuhada up onto the spears. He went to Sakina and he said, I am a Sahabi of your grandfather. Is there anything that I can do? She said, if you want to do something, ask these people to move the heads of Shuhada further away from the women so that people are busy witnessing them and not looking at our bare heads. ألا لعنة الله القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون